Facebook live broadcast. I'm Steve Altition, Director of Client Partnerships here at Pacific Cascade Legal. And today we're here with divorce coach Mardi Winder-Adams to discuss the benefits of partnering with a divorce coach alongside your legal team when navigating a contentious divorce. Okay, that was a bit of a mouth load. Mardi, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fine, Steve. Thank you so much.
Well, before we start, could you just kind of talk to us a little bit about who the heck you are and how you got to be what you got to be?
It's a long, convoluted story, so I'm going to give you the short version here.
I like that.
I have always kind of had a fascination with conflict, interpersonal relationships, how people can navigate difficult situations. So started out as a teacher and then quickly moved into behavior consulting. And I got to work with families who were in conflict with school systems. And then I got to work with family units, kids that were having problems because of situations in families. Divorce was a big one, obviously, for children that already had struggles with behavioral issues. So fast forward a few years, a friend of mine went through a divorce and said, hey, why don't you become a divorce mediator? You really helped me out. So I did that, love that work. And then as we were just speaking of, I started doing parenting coordination, parenting facilitation. Then I decided to become an executive and leadership coach. So I went through the training to do that. And the interesting thing I found out is so many of the people, and specifically the women executives, entrepreneurs, business professionals I was working with, were struggling when things outside of work were the biggest impact in their life. And divorce was the big one. So that led me into the fascinating world of divorce coaching. I did my training in that. And since about 2018 now, I have been providing divorce coaching for specifically high achieving executive entrepreneurs, professional women going through the divorce process.
Well, I love it. This is great. It's funny you talk about the impact, because that kind of leads into my first question. Before we even start talking about, what divorce coaching is, it's, the difficulties that people have in divorce and the impact that divorce has on them. Can we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, and that's, I think, and I've got a full disclosure. I went through a divorce myself when I was in my 30s. I waited to marry, thought I'd done everything right, and did for the first few years, and then things kind of fell apart. And I had never been through a legal process. I'd never had to hire an attorney. I felt pretty competent as a professional. And in the divorce, just everything. I said it just became my worst nightmare. I thought divorce was going to be a legal process, two growing up saying, okay, this business relationship we set up isn't working, so let's divide, separate, split. We didn't have kids, but that didn't matter. The conflict, the stress, the pressure, the overwhelm with the decisions, even how do I hire an attorney? Do I hire the one that my friend used that said, yeah, my attorney went after him and I got everything I wanted? Or do I hire an attorney that says, let's work this out in mediation and lower the conflict? Like, how do I know what works for me? And I think the one that a lot of women don't recognize is that divorce is not just, I'm really happy, because 70% of women file for divorce, right? It's not that men overwhelmingly file for divorce anymore, it's women. So why do we file for divorce and then feel so horrible afterwards and deal with all this emotional baggage? And the answer is because we're human beings. And because when we got married, we had a dream at that time that this was going to be our life. We were already planning our golden days on the beach in Maui or something in our retirement. And now all of a sudden that dream has come crashing down. Whether we wanted it to crash or not, it's crashed. And so I think that there's all that emotional stuff. And I also think another thing that women in professional roles have to deal with is there still is a double-edged or double perspective on men going through divorce and women going through divorce. Oh, yeah. I've been in a cafeteria at a large company, and I've heard conversations where somebody will, make a kind of almost a joke about a man going through divorce and say, and I'm not trying to be sexist here, but I'm just giving an example, and say, boy, he's trading up for a younger model. And then you hear a woman in an executive role going through a divorce, and you hear the back chatter is, well, how can she run a company if she can't even keep her marriage together? And I'm not saying that happens all the time, but those are the kind of comments I think that a lot of times women in professional roles do face when they're going through a divorce.
Well, I agree. It's the shame is all thrown on the woman a lot of times. Makes no sense. But
Well,
yeah, yeah. I have a question. I come into you, or someone comes into you, and what are some of the immediate issues that they're sort of having when they come in? Is it, have they already decided, or should they decide, or how do they decide, or what is kind of the first thing you start hearing from them?
Steve, honestly, I think the first thing is like, holy crap, how did I get here and how do I get out? Like that, and sometimes it's not that politely said like that, but a lot of the people that I get, and I only work with women. So a lot of the women that I get they're distraught. They don't know where to go, or they don't know what to do next. They're trying to, and I hear this a lot, they're trying to do this and be fair. They don't want to be seen as being the bad person, but they also want to stand up and get what they need out of the divorce. They are worried about their financial future. They're worried about their children. They're worried about how are they going to maintain this? How are they going to now be almost like a single parent, even if the other parent wants to be involved? How are they going to take care of themselves, their kids, all this new stuff as a single person, no longer in a marriage? And I think it's just complete overwhelm and nobody to share it with, because you don't want to go to the office and talk to your coworkers and say, I'm falling apart. Sometimes your family is not the people that you want to share this information with, depending on the relationship. And it's just really hard to talk about it. So who do you even find to talk about it? I think is one of the big things they're worried about.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. So let's start talking about divorce coaching. I guess, my first thing is, what is it? There's divorce therapy. I know there's divorce legal counseling. I know there's a lot of stuff, but divorce coaching, I always go back to kind of like, the basketball team. Is it like that? I mean, if so, I need a new divorce coach, but that's our basketball team.
And that's a very valid question, because I think there are a ton of divorce professionals, and depending on the situation, people can use more than one. As a matter of fact, you're typically going to, at least at the very minimal, you're going to have an attorney, hopefully, although people can do pro se divorces, obviously, but have an attorney. The divorce coaching is a place where you can go to have confidential one-on-one support. Well, with me, it's one-on-one support to contemplate your options, explore the possibilities, come up with ideas, get the emotional side of the divorce under control. Because as attorneys talk to me about all the time, I'm having trouble talking to my client because she is so emotional. I'm not sure she's understanding what I'm saying. So divorce coaching is really situational. It's what the client needs when they come in. Do they need to focus on how to prepare for mediation? Do they need to focus on, making sure that they've got a good self-care routine? If you're not taking care of yourself, you can't take care of your kids, you can't make good decisions, you can't be productive in your workplace, and you certainly can't make long-term decisions. And the other thing I think that's interesting about divorce coaching, at least the way that I do it, is I start with talking to my women and saying, where do you want to be 6 months from now? Where do you want to be a year from now? Where do you want to be 5 years from now? Because if you don't know what your goals are, how can you make decisions about your financial future today, which you're going to have to in the next few months, if you don't even know where your destination is? So really getting people to take a holistic look at life. Divorce is not the end of your life. It's a transition. It's a pivot point. It's a reset button. And how can you create the life that you want moving forward? And that includes what's your relationship going to look like with your ex-partner? It doesn't have to be gloom and doom and we can't stand seeing each other. Lots of people have great relationships after marriage. They have to work at it though. But if you got kids, it's worth the effort, I think.
I really like hearing you talk about looking at a divorce the way you do. It's funny, we just did a podcast on what we call deconstructing a divorce case, in which the very first thing you look at is, what do you want at the end?
Yeah.
And because a lot of times you can go and an attorney will give you these options. Here's an option here for the house. Here's an option for the retirement. Here's an option for, support. Here's an option for how you're going to parent, start picking. And I imagine you can help with that when they come to you saying, I got all these different things. How do I put them into a single, idea?
Yeah. And as the divorce coach, I don't give any kind of advice. And so all I do is just in coaching, we call it holding space or holding up a mirror, really saying to the client, okay, if that's the option, is the attorney has recommended you want the house. Let's think about that. Where do you want to be 5 years from now? If you don't want to own the house, if you want to be traveling the world or living in a condo where you don't have to deal with yard work or whatever, is it worthwhile making the house, a battleground in the divorce? Or would it be better off if you don't want it anyhow and they want it? Hey, that could be a really good strategy, right? Let's just say, I know you want the house, here it is. Let's talk about how I'm going to get, fair and equitable distribution based on your getting the house. So I think all of that stuff comes into play, but I do want to stress that as the divorce coach, unlike the attorneys, I'm not the one that's kind of giving the parameters. I'm just helping people explore what those outcomes might be and whether they really work for them.
That's, and the little known kind of thing is by doing that, you save them attorney fees. Because the attorneys, if they have to do that, which they can really well, but they charge a lot for that when that's not where their real prime factor is. It's on the legal stuff. So it's helpful.
Well, and I think, having people who aren't as emotionally invested, having that opportunity to talk it through with a neutral person like myself, and then go to the attorney and kind of have a list of pros and cons. I think that helps everybody, because I think it also helps the attorney because it's clear where the client is coming from and why they're making certain requests. If they can articulate that rather than just getting really emotional and just having a real struggle with even getting that information out.
Yeah. Yeah. And talking about attorneys, that kind of leads to, if you had your druthers when someone walks in, when would be the best time for them to have come to you to start the divorce? Before they saw their attorney, before they got divorced, after their divorce is final? I mean, where's the good spot?
I think the good spot is before. I work with some people who come to me who are I call it on the fence about the divorce. They're not really sure if they should or they shouldn't, especially over this last few years with COVID, where couples have been, hunkered down in place, working on top of each other, literally in small spaces, not being able to go out, not to being able to have other social interactions. I think marriages that were strong got stronger. Marriages that had cracks got chasms during COVID, with just that forced proximity really irritated some people. But that doesn't mean that now that things aren't changing, maybe do you want to work on it? Would family therapy be a good idea, or couples therapy be a good idea, or a trial separation? So sometimes, definitely if people come on in that question mark of should I or shouldn't I, again, I don't tell them one way or the other, but just help them to explore what would it be like? What is the divorce process if you take this step? A lot of people think divorce is a 3-month process, and I'm kind of saying, no, you really need to rethink that, especially if, you think the other person doesn't want to go through the divorce. It could be years to get a divorce if you're, in those high contested, high asset kind of cases. So talking about that, in helping people get an attorney, again, I don't recommend a specific attorney, but as you know, there's all different styles of attorneys, and lots of people are really intimidated going into an attorney's office, and they don't take the opportunity to maybe talk to 2 or 3 or 4 different attorneys. They just kind of go into one attorney and go, okay, this is my guy or gal. This is the person I want to work with. And that may be the person you work with, but I still think it's worthwhile to check out a couple of other people, maybe a collaborative law professional, maybe somebody who markets themselves as a more aggressive attorney, maybe somebody who, is more focused on mediated settlements, but maybe not through collaborative law process. So really having the opportunity to consider those options, because if a person picks an attorney that they know, like, and trust, I think it goes a lot smoother for everybody than if the client is doubting what the attorney is telling them. And then you change attorneys midstream. That's never a good idea.
It sounds like you provide a lot of benefits that sometimes slip through the cracks. The one I can think of, as we're just sort of talking, is a lot of clients start to second guess their decisions, but who to talk to about that. So can you kind of talk about that in some of the end goals, some of the benefits that you want to see occur for your client?
Yeah, thanks, Steve. That's a broad question. So I'm going to give you a broad answer.
Good.
I want my clients to walk out of the divorce, whenever that is. If it's 6 months from now, if it's a mediated settlement, if it goes to court, trial, whatever has to happen. But what I want them to do is I want them to walk out and say, I had the time to consider my options. I made the best decisions with the information I had at the time, because obviously things can change, and that they know that they got the best out of their divorce that they possibly could, and on their own terms. I think sometimes after the divorce, people look at other people's divorces and go, well, why did they get that? And I got this, and how did this happen? And I think if you're comfortable in the decisions you make, you trust your legal advisor, your attorney, you trust your CPA, you trust the professionals that are involved, you're going to walk out of there and go, I didn't get everything I want, but I got everything I needed. And I think that for me is the key. I want people to walk out of divorce and not have it destroy the rest of their life. I don't want them to, I would love to make it so that people aren't going to stay in conflict. And I think sometimes even one person changing how they're responding in a situation, even if both people don't have coaches, if one person learns some conflict resolution skills or some more effective communication, it's not only going to help them with that relationship if there's co-parenting going on, but it's going to help them in their next relationship. So I guess that's my goal, is for people to come out of the divorce feeling at least as good as they did when they went into it, if that makes any sense.
Oh,
so they don't feel destroyed and, beat down, just run over by the system.
That is, I see a lot of clients come out the other end, and in a lot of cases, the unhappy clients tend to be clients who didn't feel like they understood what was going on, and someone like you is there to do that, and that's pretty cool. So but you're not a one-time thing, is it? It's like I come in, I see you for an hour, and then I'm gone? Or are you more, I know you talk about the term transition coach. I mean, are you there through the transition?
I am. So I'm going to put this out there. There's all different kinds of divorce coaches. So some do hourly sessions, some do just like one-time sessions to help you prepare for mediation or a half day or something. My program is a 6-month program. So what it is it's 6 months of coaching where you have scheduled sessions throughout the month. And then I like to call myself a concierge divorce coach. So I'm available from, regular typical business hours and on weekends to my clients by text or phone, or if we need to throw in a Zoom session, we hop on a Zoom session and talk through things. And it's a package deal. So it's not a la carte. So you get what you get, and you can access those services. So I get a lot of calls Friday afternoons and Monday mornings during during the exchanges of the kids, where people are like, what do I do now? This is what's happened. How do I handle this? And again, I don't ever tell people, we just talk them through it. But I don't know if those one-off sessions are as helpful from a long-term perspective, but they certainly, can help if you've got one specific issue, but I don't tend to use those. I tend to do the longer term support. So 6 months, and I have lots of people that re-up and do it for a full year, depending on how their divorce is progressing and where they think they are and what they need.
Well, there's so many different things going on. I mean, that makes complete sense. There's like, there's people getting, custody, there's people getting parenting time, there's people getting, property, there's people getting support. I mean, there's a lot, and you work on all of those with them, I take it. I mean, not just here, share, you get the house and you get this, or that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And the other thing that I think is really important is a lot of people assume that going through a second or a third marriage and divorce is going to be much easier because you've been through it once. I find that's rarely the case. If anything, things tend to ratchet up. Especially if if there's his, hers, and their kids, those kind of co-parenting arrangements, even during the separation and before the temporary order, how do you manage that? Like, some people are like, well, I'm not letting that other person take my kids because they may just take off with them. And they have to start kind of doing reality checks on, is this a real concern, or is this something that you've contrived, or how does this look? And, so we do a lot of work on that. The other thing I think we do a lot of work on is just regular check-in on self-care, because this is a time where, again, it can get pretty easy to fall into bad habits. A couple of glasses of wine on the weekend if you're stressed, can easily turn into a lot more glasses of wine, or other behaviors that just aren't conducive. Maybe you stop going to the gym, or maybe you stop doing socializing with friends, you isolate yourself. And those are not helpful when you're going through the divorce. You need to maintain your social interactions. You need to have positive things in your life. You need to find things that you enjoy doing, even in the heat of a contested divorce. You have to have a release. You have to have things that are fun. You have to have ways to boost your own sense of self. You can't just become the divorce. And unfortunately, I have worked with women who are just consumed by the divorce. And there's men out there too. It's just, I don't work with men. So, but where the divorce becomes every single thing, like that's what they wake up worrying about in the morning. And that's what they go to sleep when they finally do at 3:00 in the morning, worrying about is what's going to happen in the divorce. And that's not healthy. It's just not.
So keeping them kind of away from the cliff is a big part of what you try to do.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes that means talking to them about, hey, is there maybe a need for a therapist as part of your divorce support team? And I'm very open with my clients. If I feel that there's a need, I don't, again, tell them, hey, go get a therapist and here's her number. What I do say is, would this be a benefit to you? And just having that conversation and just recognizing that, hey, maybe this might be something you want to consider. And it is a very valid opportunity to work through some relationship issues if you're working with a therapist.
One of the big issues also that we see is that, clients don't know what to ask. And when they're talking to an attorney, and they may not ask a question about something that they just don't know. I mean, they don't know what they don't know.
Exactly.
And it feels like what you do kind of helps in that. It helps by asking them the questions. They kind of probably go, oh, yeah, I do have that question.
Right. And sometimes one of the best questions, Steve, that I do at the beginning of the session is, what are you not certain about right now? At this point in your life, right now, what are you not certain about? And so it's interesting how sometimes they'll say, well, I didn't really understand what the divorce attorney said when he said or she said this. What does that mean? And so then, well, what do you need to know about that? So we talk about those kind of things. So like I said, my coaching is more situational, helping people. The other thing we work on a lot is budgeting. So how do you set up a budget? How do you plan? Now that maybe you only got one income, or maybe access to joint credit cards and joint bank accounts has been frozen or cut off. How do you deal with that? So we work through practical stuff as well as the more emotional side of the process.
You mentioned that you also talk with people who are going to go into mediation. And there's a lot of people who call attorneys and they maybe aren't ready for divorce yet, maybe aren't sure yet, maybe don't know how much of an attorney they need yet. And they, and it's regular, well, why don't, if you guys are amicable, go to mediation. And they do. So could I come into you and say, look, my attorney says, I'm not hired him yet, but he said, you guys might want to try mediation. Can they come to you at that point to kind of help work through that process?
Sure. And that's another good one is how do you choose a mediator? Because that makes a difference. There's a whole bunch of different styles of mediators. So, how do you choose a mediator? What do you want to discuss in mediation? Do you want to just talk about the viability of the relationship, or do you want to knock out everything, including the co-parenting plan in mediation? So there's a lot of different things, and being prepared for mediation is critical. Not, knowing what you want to say. I always throw in that BATNA, WATNA, your best alternative to a negotiated settlement, your worst alternative. You need to know what that range is so that you can walk out of there and go, okay, I did okay. Because the last thing you want to do is agree to stuff in mediation and then start backtracking, buyer's remorse and backtracking, because that does create conflict and it does create a lot of additional, as legal costs. So
yeah, and we're unfortunately we just zip through these things. We're running low on time, but one of the things that I think, it's not, you're not, just another cost. You're not more cost. I think it sounds like, you can help reduce the entire cost of a divorce with a lot of this stuff, and not minimally by not being the person they can talk to about all these questions we talked about, without a lot of which really don't need to be attorney question time and expensive.
Yeah. And I think the thing that I would like to say too is I don't think everybody needs a divorce coach. So I'm just going to throw that out there. If you are in a pretty good relationship and things are fairly amicable about the settlement, you probably don't need a divorce coach unless you're feeling really overwhelmed. But if you're dealing with a difficult partner, somebody with a personality disorder, or somebody who is just a high conflict individual, or a very competitive person, or very aggressive in their business dealings and has to be the winner, having somebody in your corner to help you, how do you talk to that person? How do you navigate? How do you set boundaries? How do you create expectations and be able to hold to them throughout the divorce, so that, like I've said before, you don't feel like you've just got steamrolled. I think that's really, really important. So, and that saves you money because you're clearer, you make better decisions, you talk to you talk to your attorney, you know what to say, and you move forward with confidence.
High conflict divorces are so tough. And that's exactly what doesn't end up happening a lot of times, is just staying settled, staying with the ability to make good decisions. Your soon to be ex could be narcissistic, could be just, bullying, could be a million things. And that can throw the best of people off.
Yes, especially, I know narcissistic is a big term now. It's used a lot, but you don't have to be a narcissist to be a jerk. Like, anybody can be a jerk during a divorce. So just, recognizing that you can, as the old saying goes, you can stoop to their level and engage in that behavior, or you can elevate yourself and really model, especially if you got kids, really effective ways to go through that situation and come out better, as a better person for doing it.
Wow. We are almost done. And I got to say, you've done two things today. First, you quoted one of my, favorite songs. You can't always get what you want, but sometimes you might find you get what you need.
You get what you need.
Right? And you don't have to be a narcissist to be a jerk. That's a great line. I wonder if you have to be a jerk to be a narcissist. But having said that, is there something we missed? Is there something you really would want as a takeaway, as a final thing to say to someone watching today?
If you are concerned about any aspect of your divorce and you are feeling overwhelmed and distraught, you don't have to do it on your own. There are confidential people who can support you and help you. Doesn't have to be me. There's a bazillion divorce coaches out there, but please don't isolate yourself and just sit back and say, oh, well, I'll deal with it once it's over. Start dealing with it now. Take control of it. Get comfortable, become confident in making the choices, because you'll feel way better when you get through the other side.
I love that. I love that. But if they do want to get a hold of you, how do they do that?
Sure. It's they can go to my website. It's www.divorcecoach4, and that's the number 4 women.com. And there is actually a giveaway there, 10 questions to ask before hiring a divorce attorney. And there's also a free strategy session. If they want to just hop on and have a half an hour conversation with me, no sales involved, I'd be happy to do that if I can get them over a little hurdle and get them heading in the right direction.
Oh, I love that. That's worth its weight in gold. We're unfortunately going to have to close up. Thank you, Marty, so much for sitting down with us today. The benefits of a divorce coach is not just always, oh yeah, it's got to be this. And you really made it understandable and informative. And so people like me can understand. And that's not an easy thing to do. So thank you.
Thank you, Steve. It's been great speaking with you.
Oh, you too. And everyone else, thank you for joining us today. Of course, if anyone has further questions on today's topic, you can also post it here and we can get you connected with Marty. And until next time, everyone, stay safe, stay happy, and be well.